Okay, so since we missed today's lecture, this is a quick video updating you on the last piece of information from the April 16th PowerPoint as well as the April 18th PowerPoint. If you notice from the study guide, there's very little that I'm going to ask you to know about Chapter 14 from the April 18th PowerPoint, and that's simply because we really don't have time to cover it in depth. There may be a few additional details that I will include as part of the lecture when we discuss the integumentary system next week. So if you're in the blue section, we'll discuss the integumentary system and the rest of Chapter 14 on Tuesday. If you're in the green section, then we'll do that on Thursday. Whichever day you have your lab exam, we'll do that during class. And so whatever we go over will be on the final exam. And what we're going over today will be on the exam next week. All right, so the cranial nerves. And it's really simple. The main thing that I want you to remember about the cranial nerves is that cranial nerves are connected directly to the brain. They connect into the brain stem, typically, rather than connecting to the spinal cord. And you need to know that there are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. All right, and you can see here in this next slide what the general structure of them. They're in lots of different places here. You can see my cursor. They're all highlighted in yellow. I don't expect you to memorize the names of these. You probably will need to learn that for a future anatomy class if you continue in any kind of medical career. And I included in the PowerPoint a list of specifically which cranial nerves service which sensory function or which motor function. And so you can see like the olfactory, which is smell, the optic, various important features of the face and the head. All right. So if we keep going down, section 13.5, the spinal nerves. So I also expect you to know that there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So just like we talked about in class on Tuesday, there is a spinal nerve on the left side and the right side of the body that is paired, that basically does the same function, but for the left or the right side of the body. All right, and so here's the detailed list of the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and coccygeal nerves. Again, I just expect you to know that there are, in fact, 31 pairs. And so the next few slides go into the details about where they are and what the details of each type of nerve. And so you can see here divided basically on those regions of the body, and this lines up directly with the same regions of the body that we learned in the bone chapters when we discussed the vertebral column. All right, and then it's also very important to understand this idea of ventral and dorsal roots. So we've mentioned this in the lab and a few times in lecture, but I want to make sure it's very clear that the spinal cord has kind of a consistent pattern where whatever is in the ventral side or the anterior side of the spinal cord is going to be important for motor function, so efferent fibers that are going from the central nervous system out into an effector skeletal muscle cell. Okay, so the ventral roots will be connected with the motor function of nerves. The dorsal roots, or the posterior portion of the spinal cord, are going to be important for sensory or afferent fibers. So the dorsal roots are going to be important for sensory or the afferent nervous system. All right, you can see those here. It's also clear on the models in the lab. All right, and so there's a lot more details here beyond what I'm expecting you to know for the exam. And so you can see details about what a ramus is. You can see here showing you the general shape of the body. So you can see this cross section. Here's the sternum, and the ribs are over here. This is the cavity here that's going to contain most of the body. Depending on exactly where this may be lower or higher. It looks like this is probably in the thoracic region, so that's the thoracic cavity, which will contain like the pleural cavity that we talked about in Chapter 3, or rather Chapter 4. And you can see here the actual vertebrae, all right, and then the actual details of the spinal cord right here. So you can see the dorsal and the ventral. All right, and so it's important that each portion of the body is innervated by specific sets of nerves. So really, we're going to focus on something called plexuses. All right, so a nerve plexus is going to basically be a network of nerves that come from several different spinal nerves that service a certain area of the body. All right, so there are multiple of these plexuses that we're going to talk about that are basically just connections of nerves that come from the same region of the body but service a different area of the body. So let's talk through a few examples. We have the cervical plexus. Okay, and the cervical plexus is going to be important. It's going to contain different nerves in the cervical region of the spine right here. Okay, so this is the cervical plexus, and the cervical plexus is going to be important for the neck, the ear, the back of the head, and the shoulders. Okay, so getting control of those sections of the body. All right. And as you see here, we're skipping quite a few slides, mostly focusing on what you actually need to know for this exam. So in the brachial plexus, all right, brachii, if you remember, we had talked about the triceps brachii, the biceps brachii, the brachioradialis, the brachialis. All of those terms refer to brachial, and brachial is the Latin word for arm, or brachii is the Latin word for arm. Okay, so when we talk about the brachial plexus, we're talking about all those nerves that come together to form a network coming out of the same region of the spine in the end of the cervical region down into the thoracic region that's going to service the arms. Okay, so when you think brachial plexus, think arm nerves. All right, so the network of nerves coming out to service the arm. And there's actually a lot of detailed organization that I'm not going to expect you to know for this class, but if you're really interested in motor function, something like therapy, you might want to take some time to understand how those nerves actually control the various regions of the muscles in the arm. So here's some of those details. And you can see here from the brachial plexus these nerves that are servicing the various regions of the arm. And here's actually showing some of these nerves coming in from the brachial plexus. All right. Then we have the lumbosacral plexus. Okay, and basically the lumbar plexus and the sacral plexus have a lot of overlapping function, and they basically serve the lower limbs as well as portions of the abdomen, the pelvis, and the buttocks. All right, and so here's some more details on specifically the lumbar versus the sacral plexus. Okay, so we're going to consider them basically the same group of plexuses, but actually they're a little more detailed on exactly which groups of nerves, which networks of nerves are going to service different parts of the body. So you can see here the lumbar plexus, obviously coming from the lumbar region of the spinal cord, and you can see here how it services the leg. And then the sacral plexus includes the important sciatic nerve. You may have heard of people that have problems with sciatica, and that's a problem with the sciatic nerve. Okay, the sciatic nerve is actually the longest and the thickest nerve of the entire body, and innervates important legs in the muscles. Important muscles in the legs like the hamstring, the adductor magnus, and a lot of the different muscles in the leg and the foot. All right, and so then the sacral plexus. Okay, you can see it's connecting here in the sacrum, so all those little holes when we study the sacrum, that's so that nerves can come through. All right, and so we have this plexus of different nerves that come together here. Are going to service other regions of the legs. So you can see here just from this picture how there's a lot of overlap between the lumbar and the plexus, the lumbar and the sacral plexus, so we just consider them one plexus group for this class. All right. And then this is pretty much it for the rest of this PowerPoint from Tuesday that you need to know for the exam. Don't forget, it's already past due, but if you've not yet done Quiz 22, make sure you do that and send me an email if you need me to reset it. I don't mind resetting any of these quizzes that you have not yet completed. And then you can see Quiz 23 is due by Friday, April 19th at midnight. All right, and both of those are on Mastering A&P.